Greetings world. We are a non-DK. As we roll right through the history and genealogy of the banking families of the elite, we hope you will begin to see the patterns. We hope you will remember the Naphtali tribe. How it split at Rome, where the papal bloodlines who rule the elite families still focus. How the branch went from the Americas to Scandinavia and settled Pannonian territory, going on to populate the areas as formed tribes. We hope you will remember how they changed their names and locations when they became too well known. How the elite infiltrated rulers through marriage, overtaking France and Europe until they joined their brothers once again in Rome. We hope you can easily see how these families who were given power under the upper families, carry out generational agendas which all culminate and carry out the plan of the one world order. We hope you will begin to see the web on your own, how the elite rule the world and keep you deceived. So let us begin, without further ado. 1807 John Jacob Astor, born in Waldorf, Duchy of Baden, Germany, was supposedly a butcher who was given a special government privilege by two mysterious Illuminatus upon immigrating to USA. It is said the two men were President Jefferson and Secretary Gallaty. The real story is that John Jacob Astor was a British intelligence agent. Kind of the end of that story, but I will divulge more details anyway. The United States government had placed an embargo on all U.S. ships from sailing with goods in 1807. However, Astor received special permission from two men for his ship to sail with its trade fur and opium cargo. The committee of 300 chose who would be allowed to trade opium in that time. The Russells are the only other family who got in on the opium trade deal. Astor's fur ship sailed and made close to a $200,000 profit in that day's money. His fur trade business was the most scrupulously run business there was. His employees were paid with letters of credit. Then agents were sent to ambush and kill them, so that the Astor Fur Company could save money. The deaths were blamed on natives. Continuous false accusations on the natives of America created the type of environment they created in Nazi Germany and the United States today. Their constant propaganda and racism perpetuates just that. The aim being depopulation. This worked, creating many wars and many war crimes and atrocities with the Native Americans and natives of other countries occupied by the elite. We will look more at John Astor in a moment. It's important to mention some other history at this time. Albert Pike was born on December 29, 1809, went to Harvard and was a general in the Confederate Army. He was found guilty of treason and pardoned by fellow Freemason President Andrew Johnson. Grand Master of the Order of the Palladium, which is a satanic club. Pike founded the Ku Klux Klan in 1865. That is what we are told anyway. This was simply a renaming of the Knights of the Golden Circle, a branch of the Scottish Rite. Pike was just one in a group of Illuminatus who founded the club. The other two were British agent Judah Benjamin, was also leader of B'ai B'rith and worked with fellow agent Dr. Cutter Baruch, also a leader for the B'ai sect. Together they started the Ku Klux Klan using Jesuit priest Albert Pike as the face of the founding. These three planned Lincoln's assassination. All groups like KKK and other cults always lead back to the same people. It's easy enough to research any one of them. The members of these groups become your doctors, lawyers, senators, pastors. Let's take a look at some of them. Another work done before this letter was written was Operation KKK. Let's see a few Klan members found. And see how these cults are used to steer the elite's agendas. Robert Michael Givens helps the elite control media as a movie director and writer. He is a current leader of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which is a subgroup of the KKK. Then we can see Dr. James Michael Hill, founder of the League of the South, has published 2 books on Scottish history. He has a mail-order store for Scottish books. He had been a professor at Occidental College until he created the Klan division in 1994. Elite control of education. He once posted on his Facebook page, quote, "Yes, the South has a black problem. It also has a Yankee problem. But our biggest problem, and one even Christian members within our own ranks refuse, or fear, to acknowledge, is the jury problem. Indeed, organized jury has been at the root of most of the South's troubles for the past 100 years. End quote. So long as people feed the elite's agendas to keep us divided, whether it is through religion, politics, class status, job status, or racism, so long as these divisions remain fed by the people, so long will they last. The elite have created racism, the illusion and lie that humans' ethnicities are a dividing factor. This lie permeates through all religions, governments, countries, and people. The race of humanity has been created with a palette only a true artist and designer would pick. What should bring us joy and uncontrollable beauty? What is already so perfect? What gives us the natural differences that make us unique and diverse is exactly what the elite use to keep us divided against each other and blind to them. Only when humanity unites against them, will the elite be destroyed. Knowing this, they must keep us divided. Our differences on all levels is what makes us stronger than them, what gives us what cannot be controlled or stopped. We must come together and use our uniqueness, combine our individual excellences as intended and unite as humanity. Humanity is the opposite of artificial intelligence. The elite want us all to have a hive mind, to be linked to the cloud, to be uploaded and logged, and our minds merged with machines as well as our bodies. They want to destroy the last thing that makes us human. Do you not understand? They have divided humanity to the extent they are able to now undo the literal fabric, the DNA, of mankind. And the masses are already flocking to it, racing to the singularity full speed ahead. Blind to the beauty that we already are and the power we already have. But I digress. Let us continue looking at the KKK and how this one group affects society. As said earlier, they are in politics. Gems like Joe Wilson, U.S. Congressman and fame-hungry David Duke, Grand Wizard, Senator and presidential candidate, just like Merlin Miller. Grand Dragon of the East Coast Knights of the Truly Visible Empire, William Walters, who was Republican committeeman, like most are, for 10 years and neighborhood watch for 5 until he was discovered. These narrow-minded, indoctrinated, violent, hate-filled puppets of the elite are in every facet of American society. There are countless others and we could go on and on for books. Anonymous has uncovered many KKK members and the information is easy to find on that, so we will continue. The KKK, Beirith, Knights of the Golden Circle are all Freemason groups. The web is very big, but once you take a step back, realize what you are seeing, you can see it clearly as long as you stay vigilant. Stop being blinded by the false divisions the elite make only to fool you. Stop falling for deception every time. Pike wrote a letter to Mafia founder Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871 describing the Brotherhood plan for 3 world wars ending in the New World Order. The letter stated, War I would destroy the Tsarist Russia and create a communist puppet employed by bankers. War II would create a new Israel to be used as mercenary force for bankers and who would also protect Middle Eastern oil for the Rockefellers and Rothschilds specifically. War III would be Arabs versus Zionists. This will culminate in the New World Order, of course controlled by the banker puppets. Albert Pike wrote, "We must provoke a social cataclysm, which in all its horror, everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves, against the world minority, of revolutionaries, will receive the true light, through the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view. Do you not see we are there now?" The War of 1812 profited Astor greatly. Astor worked together with George Clinton, another member of the Illuminati, on land deals. British intelligence worked for the Committee of 300 and for the 13 families. John Coleman and John Jacob Astor were British secret agents. DeWitt Clinton, who lost the presidential candidacy, was associated with the Illuminati, as was his uncle George Clinton, vice president to Thomas Jefferson. It runs in the family. Jefferson once told Astor that he hoped for the establishment of an independent nation on the Pacific coast, bound to the United States by ties of blood, language and friendship. Franklin Hughes Delano was born in 1813, heir to a huge oil fortune, and married Lavia Astor, daughter of William Backhouse Astor. James Roosevelt married Helen Astor, daughter of William Backhouse, Jr., and the next James Roosevelt married the sister of Lady Nancy Astor. This connects President Roosevelt to the Astors, Freemasons and Illuminati not only by station but by blood. Now we will spend more time on John Jacob Astor. Astor or Astarte means star, like the one they worship, also another name for Lucifer. Let's trace his real roots once and for all. Johann Jacob Astor was born July 17, 1763. He had 8 children with his wife, Sarah Cox Todd of the Brevoort family, devout Satanists. 3 of them died almost instantly and 1 was mentally ill and sickly. This is very common among these families because of the blood as well as rituals they perform involving child sacrifice. He was worth $110.1 billion as of 2006. It's easy to follow his line through his son William Backhouse Astor. For now, let's look back. John was the son of Johann Jacob Astor, also known as Jacob Astor Metzger, and Maria Magdalena Vorfelder, also called von Berg. Speaking of Berg, one of his descendants, John Jacob Astor IV, went down with the Titanic. John and his cousin William Waldorf built the first Waldorf Astoria Hotel on the corner of 33rd and 5th, 13 stories high. The Empire State Building was built on the same spot and opened in 1987. 33 is the highest level of Freemasonry. Levels are used in all of the elite's cults. They live on hierarchy. Only when one reaches the 33rd level, is one told the true intentions of that cult, whether it is Illuminati or Freemasonry and others. Only the select few are chosen, and only the select few will ever be told the agenda. Those not chosen who wish to know the truth must be wise and understand their mind and study them without indoctrination to see truth. Back to John Astor. He arrived in the US in 1783. We find that his connections had not only been made since birth but also through his occupation as a secret agent, which also comes with the blood. In 1901 the Astors helped create the Pilgrim Society, a cover organization for American and British 6 degrees princes of the Illuminati. By following this club you can follow the Astor clan. Let's look a bit deeper into where they come from, as our goal is to expose the lineage back to Cain, as they claim. We must link them back again to the Pannonian area and Rome, where they came from. Jacob Astor Metzger, also Johann Astor, did live in Waldorf, Germany. However, the entire rest of the line is found in Britain and Switzerland and are one of the founding families and main supporters of the group Skull and Bones, Britain chapter. Johann Jacob Astor, a butcher, married Maria Magdalena Vorfelder, and apparently that's as far back as we can go according to our publicly accessible history. Well, we have a problem. We don't trust or listen to what any government tells us. So we will continue with what we have discovered through many different files collected from churches, census and immigration records and much more. You want to know truth? There are no simple answers or links to articles that explain this out. This is a summary of an entire history of research into all things that come from the genealogy of the elite. This work is only done because those who rule you know this and say nothing to you. No one is saying it. And because no one speaks, you live in lies. This is why we do this. This is why we read every article, site, video, book, letter, census, certificate, and picture on the internet, pertaining to the elite genealogies, in order to see through the deceptions and misguidances. It must be exposed. The enemy must be understood and known, if it is to be stopped. These are your masters. We show them to you in this series, laid bare for you. Because no one else will. The bloodline changed names so frequently it's dizzying. Here is a short list, believe it or not. They changed from Astor to Betzer to Bristed, Ward to Withrope, Schaller, White, Francis, Pickmer, and Stockfemore. Margaret Aldrich married Christopher Rand, then Byron de Mott. The name Aldrich comes into play, then changes again to Von Agel, Morgan, and Whitney, Collins and Van der Bilt. Johnson to Emmett. Egerton White Schaller died of a brain tumor in 1882. Like many with their blood, she had a son who died at or before birth. Schaller is the largest of the American Astor branch today. Heathcote, Drummond, Willoughby, and Leghorn are seen around the 40s. Then Frakel, Woodward, McIntosh, Smith, Carey, Van Ale, later Walden. Then Helen Shea Mahorn Astor married James Roosevelt, Sr., the half-brother of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Fargo, Drayton and Wilson names then follow the lineage to MC Ewan. As of the 1980s, the Astors started relocating to their homeland of Britain and only small traces are seen in the USA now. This is a very, very short list of last names they go by, however, it will be enough for you to follow the trail. Sorry to go backwards in time, but it's easiest to work from what we know back to the tribes, at this point. Looking further, we can see in 1620, in the Alpine town of Chiavia, Guyover Pietro Astor was born. He fled during the Counter-Reformation with his wife and 2 children to Zurich. He changed his name to Hans Peter Astor. His descendants can be easily traced in Switzerland till Johann Jacob was born. Johann Jacob then moved to Usloch in Baden and had one son we know of, Felix. In 1713 Felix moved to Waldorf to live in his wife, Eva Dorothea Freud's, estate. He also owned a vineyard in nearby Wieslach. He had 20 children. Most have moved from the area and we see them in Britain and America. His son Johann Jacob Astor stayed in Waldorf and did become a butcher. His eldest son, George, went to London and employed John Jacob, his brother, in 1779. George was not a butcher as history tells us, that was his father, and therein lies the deception. There is the rewriting of just enough history to hide their generations. John Jacob married Maria and we know the rest from there. Now, if you're up for it, we will see if we can't prove our point even further. We see Antoine d'Astorg in 1676, married to Marie de Mary. Their daughter Aimée d'Astorg can be traced easy enough through to Marie Antoinette and daughter Louise d'Astorg born in Les Bastide Murat, Lot, Midi-Pyrénées, France. Another Astor, Jean-Michel d'Astor-Gobeide, was a canon regular and vicar capitular of Pamiers. Born in 1639 and educated at Toulouse, France, he entered the seminary of Pamiers and joined the canons regular. After the death of Bishop François Corlet, he was chosen as administrator of the diocese. He did not recognize royal nominations and excommunicated the canons appointed by the king. He was arrested by royal order and imprisoned for 6 years at Caen, where he died in 1692. This lineage goes back in time and is relatively easy to follow, if you know where to look. We see Charlotte de Valois Capet murdered in 1477, and in 1462 we see Philippa II born in France. Also known as Philippe von Harlichtenberg, was married to Anne de Iceberg-Buddage. His sister was Marguerite and parents, Philippe I Harabade-House. The Astor line, like the DuPont we discussed before, took the name where their ancestors came from. We can easily locate the family back to Baden, Germany, which was in the land the tribes occupied. Again we find the links. Philippe I was married to Agnes de Lichtenberg. A few knights of the family are Pedro de Astorga, who was a knight from Leon, Spain, killed in the Crusades 1203. There is now an Episcopal Astorga cathedral called Catedral e Palacio Episcopal de Astorga in Leon. His name can easily be found along with his lineage. Pierre d'Astorg served under Simon de Montfort, Comte de Toulouse, at the Battle of Muret, 1213, where the King Peter of Arioch was killed. Bernard d'Astorg is another crusader from Toulouse. Jean-Jacques d'Astorg was a knight of the Order of Saint John of Jerusalem, and when the people woke up, the knights were disbanded and he fled to Germany and settled in Baden. This line is easily followed back to René I Dorfelder, also known as Richard von Dorfelde, in 1026. The lords of Hora can be traced back easy from here through Germany, Spain and Italy, leading back to the tribes, connecting the bloodline of the Astors to Cain, again. So, let's move up to date. Back to 1812 USA, we see the Freemason Jefferson clan was not blind as far as the bank went and did oppose it, to no avail. They fought against the removal of the 13th Amendment and failed, as we can see today. The 13th Amendment forbade any lawyer, anyone with titles of nobility, to become president, since they can be bought and controlled and are professionally trained to deceive. That amendment was secretly deleted from the Constitution and lawyers have been in office ever since. It is almost a requirement, just as it was for the popes in Rome. The British referred to knights as squires and those who bore the knight's shields as esquires, which is the term still used for lawyers today. America has always had a class system due to the fact that it is a British colony, and until it is actually destroyed and the United States becomes its own country, there can be no change. Until the word honor is written back into the Constitution, as it was in the 13th Amendment, the government will continue to systematically deceive and abuse the people. Upon the printing of paper which is valueless, fake money, gold and silver became scarce, the United States citizens lost any power they had and became slaves to the fake money system. Still today you can see the elite's phrase on the back of all USA currency, Ovus Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages. The War of 1812 was financed with printed continental bills which equaled $400 million. At that time the value dropped so low what used to be regular currency and what is still today the only legal currency. Legal meaning gold or silver coin. Costing between 1,000 to 5,000 paper bills. The only legal tender the USA has are gold and silver coins from the US Mint from year 1933 and before. The Constitution prohibited paper money, and because no one listened or cherished their rights then, Americans are still enslaved and still have the same issues and still no one cares enough to do something about it. Of the people, for the people and by the people means being held accountable to the public. This would make a truly revolutionary, radical, strong, free and wonderful country. That would be a country built on the ideals of true anarchy. I know, you have been given the government's false definition of anarchy. Look it up and learn what anarchy really is. It is free of government, where people live as humanity is supposed to, in peace, as equals, without rulers. Taking care of each other in trading of goods as a community. In 1837 a financial panic was executed in order for the Astors and other families to close mortgage debts and other schemes, as with every economic collapse. Jehovah's Witnesses trace their origins to the 19th century Adventist movement in America created by William Miller, a Baptist lay preacher whom, in the year 1816, began proclaiming that Christ would return in 1843. Don't worry, it didn't happen. However, he did get a large, instant following by proclaiming this several different times. The Branch Davidian who died at Waco, Texas, under the leadership of David Koresh were also created by William Miller. They use religion to herd you like cattle. Back to history of the time period, in the 1830s, The DuPonts organized a local militia called the Brady Rangers, whose flag was a beehive on white silk. We can see the bee and beehive symbolism in Freemasonry and have discussed the bee, which we see now as the fleur-de-lis. The bee is also the male aspect of this occult symbol. The flower being the female, as the bee is often depicted on a lotus or other flower. The bee have one queen, as do the elite. The beehive represents the elite quite well, as they are those who will attack, sting, torture, poison, murder any who try to move it. And as we have discussed before, it is a good representation of the elite agenda for the hive mind. No free thought outside of the elite's box of control. This symbolism also links to the pentagram symbols as well as the cube symbols. That is how the occult mind works. It encompasses every twisting and manipulation of the organic and pure. Lafayette visited the DuPonts in Delaware the summer of 1825. Henry Clay was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Kentucky and Grand Orator. The DuPonts played a role building of the American capital, Washington, D.C., which was laid out and constructed with numerous occult patterns just like the rest of the American, British, Egyptian, Roman, French and other pan-Neon tribe landmarks. The third city-state was complete, and the trinity of power the elite hold on this earth was fully operational. 1835 July 3rd, Michael Chandler came to show his Egyptian mummies and artifacts. The Mormons in the area told the traveling showman how their prophet, Joseph Smith, had the ability to translate the papyri, having allegedly done so, causing the creation of the Mormon religion. In reality, he was drugged by the CIA. They read passages of the Bible to him and made him write down what he heard. They made fake papyri to fool the public into thinking he had translated them. The families created and funded Smith through the CIA to use him as a front. This is the same story for every religion, as we have exposed before. Religion is a tool to make you a fool. Free yourself from the brainwashing. During this time, Britain started its decades-long series of opium wars with China. In China, 1839, the emperor has appointed Lin Pei-su Commissioner of Canton to help fight the drug war they were having. The terror group of the day was the Triad Gang. The British Jesuit Church of England funded and created group, Triad Society, also known as the Society of Heaven and Earth. Still, they don't go out of their way to be original with names. 30 Tyrants, ISIS, Triad Society. Francis David Langhorne Astor was born in 1912, London, England, the third child of American-born Waldorf Astor and Nancy Witcher Langhorne. Waldorf Astor was a rich New York Astor who owned The Observer and edited for other papers until he bought them out and was involved in politics, as was his wife. Francis David also involved in papers, and even though he failed Oxford because of his nerves, he was able to serve with distinction, it seems, as a Royal Marines officer in France. He went on to influence the propaganda machine of the elite through news, and Richard Astor, his son, took over after him. We see Caroline, cousin of David's father, Waldorf Astor, from 1897 to 1961. Caroline Astor Drayton Phillips, wife of William Phillips. They had 6 children. As a Harvard alumnus, Harvard has her diaries in safekeeping, including letters between Caroline and Waldorf, Roosevelt, and others. We can also see she was a channeler. Many of her letters from Olivia Cutting reference the early death of Olivia's son and Caroline's close friend, William Bayard Cutting, Jr. They also discuss Olivia's attempts to contact him after his death. March 12, 1916, and December 16, 1919, Caroline attempted to contact Bayard by means of what they call automatic or spirit writing, allowing a spirit to possess your body and use it to communicate. In 1973 we find William Astor Drayton oversaw extensive gold exploration and mining operations, primarily in British Columbia. William was the great-grandson of John Jacob Astor. As you remember, John Astor was the one used to set up a corporate trade trust in America and Canada, which led to him having to relocate to England, where we find William and his family. William had a son, William Astor Drayton Jr., and a daughter, Countess Margaret Astor Drayton Rivetlow, and moved them back to Connecticut, USA, where he died. In 1942, Countess Margaret Rivetlow married Count Kurt Haugwitz Hardeberg Rivetlow, who died in 1969. Margaret founded Connecticut Volunteer Services for the Blind and Handicapped and was president until 2011. Having died in 2014, we see her children Alida Albright and her son Richard Haugwitz Rivetlow. Her granddaughter Leslie Merrill Zimmerman is married to Mark Robert Zimmerman, who is an account executive with the J. Walter Thompson Company in New York, graduated cum laude from Princeton University. In 2007 we see Prime Minister David Cameron's cousin-in-law, Brooke Astor, dies at the age of 105. She had been awarded the United States top civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, for her charitable efforts. Husband Vincent Astor and Brooke had one child, Anthony Marshall. Anthony coincidentally has a Purple Heart from Iwo Jima. We see some more family drama in 2013 when Anthony apparently became too greedy and started using his inheritance before his time. The whole bucket of relatives crawled out of the woodwork for this event. Henry Kissinger, Barbara Walters and David Rockefeller provided testimony in court charging Marshall with elder abuse. We have seen many family members cast out when they are not approved of any longer, and greed is a powerful temptation. Like pride, it only leads to misery. These histories become monotonous after a while. So let us keep moving, and we will see you next time. We expect it.